Today I am going to talk about how to leave safely. Now, we all talk about leaving and escaping an abusive relationship. However, there are not right and wrong ways to do it, but there are ways to do it safely and ways to wing it. Okay, but with a bit of preparation, you don't have to wing it too badly. Now, I'm going to give you some tips for creating a safety plan today. Safety plan today. Get my teeth in, this is being created by a company called or a site called Very Well. Okay, so when you're in an abusive relationship and you are thinking about leaving, it's really important that you thoroughly think through how you're going to protect yourself from additional harm. Okay, because it can be a very dangerous situation. So depending on your situation, you might be considering leaving, or maybe you're already in the process of leaving. Maybe you hadn't even considered the possibility of ending the relationship, but you just want more information. And whatever your current situation looks like, safety planning is a very personalized process. So after all, no two relationships are the same. And you know the dynamics of your relationship better than anybody else at all. But there are some basic points that you need to consider as you put your plan into place. And I'm going to give you an overview of the key points that you might want to consider. Okay, so the first thing is, what is a safety plan? So in general, a safety plan is personalized and it's a practical plan on how to remain safe in an abusive relationship whilst preparing to leave, when the timing is right and it's safe to do so. So safety planning requires really careful thinking through possible scenarios and determining how best to cope with abuse, and telling friends and family members and reaching out for legal assistance, because you might not be ready for all of that, but you might be thinking that I'm going to have to go at some point. I'm not quite ready to go yet, but I need to have preparations in place. This is what you need to kind of consider, because an effective safety plan will give you ideas on how to support yourself and stay safe once you have exited the relationship. So overall, a good safety plan will have all of the vital information that you need, as well as help walk you through different scenarios. Okay, so sometimes we think, oh God, yeah, but that's obvious, I know all this information. But some of the information that you think that is obvious, and you know the numbers off the top of your head, when you're in a crisis situation, and when your brain doesn't often work in fully functioning mode, your brain goes into primitive mode and it's going into fight or flight or freeze. So at that point in time, it doesn't care about remembering numbers or remembering where somebody lives or remembering irrelevant information that it considers irrelevant to the prime importance right there and then, which is get you out of there. Your brain won't necessarily give you all of that information like that. So what you need to do is have all of this stuff written down so that you can actually get access to the information, so that you can help yourself when it's the right time. And it's things like phone numbers, addresses, information. When you're focused on staying safe and surviving, it's really important to have all of this information. So having the safety plan in place is a way to protect yourself if things escalate in your relationship. Okay, so you might not even be thinking of leaving at all. However, having a safety plan doesn't mean you have to leave. It just means that if you have to leave, you can be safe. Okay, so lots of people living in abusive relationships need to know how to stay safe whilst they're in the relationship until they have the strength, courage, and resources to safely leave. And that time may never come. They may never leave their abuser, but having this safety plan gives them backup in case. Okay. There's a national domestic violence hotline which gives suggestions on how to stay safe while still in a relationship with an abusive person. So you can obviously Google the National Domestic Violence Hotline, and you'll find the information there. So the first thing is to identify some safe spaces in your home. Now think about your house, think about the layout of your house, and think about a room in your house that doesn't have any weapons or things that could be used as weapons. And additionally, you should identify areas that have a way out if needed, like a window or a door. Now, I had a safety guy from the police come to my house after my last relationship ended, and we put alarms on the windows, we've got door jammers, etc. And we went on a tour around the house. And I said, oh, yeah, I'd go to my bedroom because I can exit from my bedroom down out of the front window. Okay, I might probably break my legs or my ankles, but that's okay because I'd still be alive. And the other room I was thinking of was the bathroom. And he said, no. And I was like, but I can get out of there. And he was like, no, because there's water. He said, water can be used to drown you. And I was quite shocked. I was like, oh, so don't go anywhere where there's a tap then? He was like, yeah, exactly. So you need to identify the layout of your house. Where is a safe place? And can you secrete a door jammer device? And I don't have one I can show you, but basically you can buy what's called a door jammer, and you literally, it's just a standalone little device. They're not very expensive. You could put it somewhere out of the way, and then if you needed to go into a room to be safe, you can put the door jammer at the bottom of the door and action it, activate it, and it will actually stop anybody getting through that door to you unless they physically chop through the door. So it will buy you time, if nothing else. So it's important that you have these kind of thoughts and plans in place if you need it. If you have a window, if you have a room with a window that you could use as a safety exit, you could have potentially a metal ladder that you store under the bed in that room that could be used for fire escape. That can be used for escape if you have to get out of that house quick. Use the door jammer and then get out using the ladder. So there's ways and means of doing this. And if you've got a neighbour that you can trust, you can talk to them about what you're experiencing, and you can give them a code word or a signal that you can use if you need help. So you can sit down and talk about it, decide together what their next steps would be if you used that word or signaled them, like calling 911 or picking up your children from school and keeping them safe away from the house. Talking about children, teach your kids how to get help, because if your kids are in the house, you need them to know that they should never intervene in any type of violence. And talk to them about the importance of safely leaving the house and going to a neighbour's if they're old enough. Teach them how to call 911 as well. So it's really important that they know how to call for help. And I'll give you an example of this. My son locked us in our bathroom. Accidentally, the handle fell off. We couldn't open the door, and I was in my dressing gown because it was early in the morning and it was a weekend, and so I wasn't wearing it. I just had a dressing gown on. He just had pajamas on. We were locked in the bathroom. We couldn't get out, and I live in a little close of probably a dozen houses, and there was nobody up. We opened the front windows because it opens out onto the front, the windows. And we opened the windows out wide, and literally for half an hour we kind of stood there waiting for somebody to come into the close. He's aged, he must have been aged 3.5, maybe 4 at the most. And he stood at the window shouting, "Help! Help!" In a little voice, because he was only little, but it was funny. But he knew at that age what to do. He knew to call for help. So it's really important that no matter how old the children are, they know, sort of where they can go safely, which neighbour's house to go to safely. If you've got an older child and younger children, task the older child with making sure the younger kids get taken around there safely and call the police when they get there. And then The next thing is making a habit of keeping the car fueled and ready. And I have to admit, I kind of stick to this rule most of the time as well. Anyway, because abusive situations are unpredictable, and consequently, you never know when you might have to leave suddenly. And as a result, your fuel tank should always be filled with fuel and ready to go. So you could consider leaving all of the doors locked apart from the driver's side door. Problem is, if somebody steals it, you might not be insured. Normally, you have an electronic key fob that you can just press as you're running towards it. But quite often, what will happen is that they'll take your car keys so that you cannot escape. So they take your keys to stop you from leaving, and you need to put an emergency set of keys in a safe place so that you can access them in an emergency. And you should also try and keep your cell phone with you on your person at all times if possible. You should know where the nearest public phone is located. You need to know where you can get help, you know? Another one is avoiding wearing scarves and long jewelry. And I would never have thought of this, but if you are in an abusive encounter, things around your neck can be used to strangle you. Even if you think your partner would never go that far, it is important to take precautions because you never know how far a person is going to go. And then the next thing is planning for your emotional safety. So many people who have been victimized by abuse indicate that the emotional scars from the emotional abuse and the verbal abuse are sometimes the hardest to overcome. And I can second this. It's horrendous. It takes so long to recover emotionally from what's happened to you. And it's really important that you plan to take care of yourself emotionally and get support from the correct places. Now, here's some of the things that you can do to protect your mental health. One of the things is surrounding yourself with supportive people. So when you're dealing with abuse, it's important to have one or two family members or friends that you can talk to, especially because abusive people often try and isolate those that they victimize. And ideally, the people that you surround yourself with will be able to recognize the signs of abuse and offer wisdom and support. And, make sure that the people that you confide in are willing to allow you to make your own choices at your own pace. Because it's no good confiding in somebody and then all you get from them is, why haven't you left yet? When are you leaving him? Why haven't you left yet? That's not helpful. That's not helpful at all. What you need is somebody that you can confide in that will be supportive until you reach that point where you're ready to leave. So you want them to support you rather than try and fix you or fix your situation or rescue you or push you into doing something before you're ready, because it won't work. You'll just end up going back. And I know these things because I've been there. The next thing is identifying and working towards some goals. So although there are times when you will have to leave an abusive relationship without a plan, it's important to set some goals so that you can be on your own. So that might mean learning new skills, so that you can find a job or taking classes. And whatever route you take, working towards becoming independent and self-supporting can be incredibly empowering and may even give you the strength to leave. So the next thing here is finding a peaceful place for yourself. So dealing with abuse on a consistent basis can be overwhelming. It can be stressful. It can be emotionally draining, and you need to find a place where you could go to relax and think. And some examples might be a park, the library, a coffee shop. The key is that whatever place you choose, you are able to find some peace and unwind, because your brain is in constant fight or flight mode. So your brain is in constant adrenaline mode. It's flooding your body with hormones that are ready to allow you to run to safety or to freeze you so that you don't move, so that you're just inactive, completely just frozen to the spot. Because if your body and your brain are in constant fight or flight mode, it's incredibly damaging to your body to allow that to continue long term. So by removing yourself from the situation and getting yourself into a place of peace and calm, even if it's just a yoga class once a week, that is approved by your abuser. You're not going anywhere special. You're not doing anything that, they would consider to be risky, but it would give you an opportunity to just kind of zone out and unwind. And practicing self-care is really, really important, because it's important to do what you can to care for your body and your mind. And that might mean having a nice hot shower, making time for prayer or meditation, or spending some time journaling. And other options are reading, watching a good movie, exercising. And there are lots and lots of different ways of how to look after yourself. And the important thing here is that you stay safe. So, for example, if you're journaling, I would suggest journaling to a cloud device so that it's not easily readable, because the last thing you want is your abuser picking up your journal and then reading about all your plans to leave them. That won't work. That will just escalate the situation incredibly quickly, and you may not be able to get out safely. So whatever you choose to do, it needs to be a safe option. Okay. Now the next thing here is that when you leave, and you probably have heard it time and time and time again, why don't you just leave? Just leave it. Just leave him. Oh, for goodness sake! You keep saying that it's an abusive relationship, but you keep staying, and they don't understand. Unless somebody has lived this kind of situation, they do not understand. They do not have a clue how complex this situation is. And especially when the abuse is escalating, you know that it's just not going to be that easy. And aside from putting your personal safety at risk, you're probably also thinking about your children and your pets. It's not just as simple as walking away, because leaving an abuser is dangerous. And after all, the abuser is losing control of you, and he's losing control of the relationship, and that will often escalate the violence in order to make you stay. So the statistics show that the likelihood of a person being seriously injured or killed whilst trying to leave increases exponentially. And for this reason, you need to plan carefully about how you will leave the relationship, ensuring that you have the strength, courage, and resources to make it happen. So, before you leave, so this is important, before you leave, you need to do planning wherever possible. There are some instances where it's not possible to plan and prepare, but when you're leaving an abusive relationship for good, if you can, you plan, you prepare. If the abuse or violence escalates before you have time to completely prepare, just get yourself to safety. Don't, just go. But you can always handle these details at a later date. The key is that you keep yourself safe and free from harm. And if you have time to develop a safety plan, here are some things to consider. So one of the things to consider in the first instance is proof of the abuse. Because if you've been injured, you'll want to keep photos of the abuse, as well as copies of any police reports, time-stamped, date-stamped photos. If you don't have time and date stamped on your camera, then you can email the photos to yourself that day, and that will give a day and a time stamp for use. Okay. If you've got a journal of the verbal abuse, that's really helpful, and making sure that you include dates, times, and details of what happened, and any witnesses to the abuse. The second thing is knowing where you can get help, because it's important to research who you can call when you need help. In other words, find the telephone numbers and websites for local shelters and hotlines. And you might also want to find out where and when local support groups meet, because having resources available to you when you need them is an important part of safety planning. And these places that can help you, in virtually every town, there is a domestic abuse or domestic violence centre or charity or shelter. And if you Google your town or the nearest town to you and domestic domestic violence, then you will find your nearest place, and they have resources that we don't have access to. So they have resources that you may well not be aware of at all. And they sometimes have resources to provide you with accommodation, financial support, legal support, emotional support, court support. Depends on where you are and what resources are available. They can be life-saving. They really can. And the next thing is acquiring job skills. So if you eventually plan to leave the person who is abusing you, you will need to be able to support yourself financially. And if you don't already have a job that allows you to do that, you may want to look in taking some additional classes or acquiring job skills that will help you become more employable. The next one would be to set money aside. Now, although financial abuse is often part of an abusive relationship, it's important to set aside some money if you can safely do so, so that you can pay for food and gas and lodging when you initially leave. Now, if it's not safe to keep the money in your home, then ask a trusted family member or friend to keep it for you, or get a safety deposit box at the local bank where you can keep cash. Just remember that if you have to leave at night or over the weekend, you may not be able to access the money. So you may put the money into a passbook account with a little building society or something. But the important thing is to have something that you can get access to help you straight away. The next thing would be locating and assembling important documents. So when you're planning to leave an abusive person, it's important to have access to all your important documents. So you want to keep all those things in one place. So for instance, your social security card, birth certificate, marriage license, in a place where you can get to them quickly. And you also may want to keep copies of them at a trusted family member's house in case they get destroyed on purpose by the abuser. Likewise, copies of insurances, car registration, mortgage agreement, bank statements, etc., pension statements, all of that. Any important documents that you can lay your hands on that detail the assets, that are legal documents, passports, driving license, marriage certificate, birth certificate, all of those things. Take copies of them, make sure somebody's got copies, or upload the copies to the cloud so that you can access it remotely. But also, if you can, just pop them into a folder under the front seat of your car. Tape it up to the underside of your seat if you have to. Just make sure you've got them somewhere safe. Organise important phone numbers. So you might think you'll never forget your mum's phone number or your best friend's number when you're anxious and scared, but it can happen. And keep a list of all your important numbers in your car and in your wallet. And this way, if they take your phone, you still have the numbers listed in several other locations. You're not just reliant on having that physical phone. Now, after you leave, it's important that you realise that your risk of harm or injury does not go away. In fact, you might be at greater risk. So it's important to take steps to keep yourself as safe as possible. So here's some suggestions on things that you might want to consider doing. First thing is changing your phone number. So once you've left the relationship, you might want to consider changing your number. So unless there's kids involved, you want to make it difficult for the abuser to contact you again. So if you can't change your number, block them. You can arrange to any contact regarding kids' visitation, etc. You can arrange to go to an email address, and if they're violent, then you may have to request that all visitation is conducted in a supervised contact centre, not with a relative, not with a friend, at a supervised contact centre, because that way you have the official people looking after your children, and your abuser will not be able to harm them or use them against you in any way, because the last thing you want is for them to take off with your children. Alter your work hours and your route to work. So often the abuser will take to stalking you, and they may try to intercept you if they know your routine. So change all of your predictable routines, take a different route, ask for a different schedule at work, change up the way you get there. You don't want to have any predictable patterns in your life that make it easy for the abusive person to find you. And if you don't know, if you want to avoid getting into a pattern, because quite often we unconsciously fall into a pattern, little tip that I got was write down your routes on a spoon, on a plastic spoon or a plastic knife. pop those knives upside down into a cup. Every day, just pull one knife up that has the name of that route for today on, and then that route is gone for that week. So you're gonna have different routes on different knives, and then every day you pull out a different one, and then at the end of the week they will go back in the pot. That way there is no risk of a pattern forming, because it's random. You can't see which one you're picking. And as hard as it may be, you need to start shopping in different stores and going out with friends to different places, because your abuser will look for you in places that you normally go to. So you want to be sure you're changing everything up, and doing it will keep you safer. And you need to tell the school. If you've got children at school, then you need to be sure that the school is aware of the volatile situation. And too many times abusive people will come to the school to get kids without permission. And likewise, they might take the kids without permission and hold them as almost like a hostage to get you to talk to them. And that is normally a very, very dangerous situation. So don't be afraid to get the police involved if that happens, because it's not on. It's too risky, it's too dangerous. So you need to make sure that the school is fully aware of the situation. And if you're working, you need to talk to your co-workers. You need to let them know that you're having a problem. You need to let them know so that they can be aware if this person turns up at your workplace, the situation, because they know that it's probably going to escalate. So letting them know is as much for your safety as well as for theirs. And if you can, replace wooden doors with steel ones. So most likely, if the abusive person in your life is going to figure out where you live, which they probably are because they're probably going to stalk you, if you can, try to have wooden doors replaced with steel ones and install a security system. You may want to consider motion sensor lights that come on anytime someone comes near your home, and that will help deter the abuser from hiding in the shadows and waiting for you. What we have installed is a camera. You can buy them on Amazon, and it's motion censored. It has night vision and it has a 180-degree view. So literally it follows you down the path. So if somebody comes up the path, it follows them up the path. It records 24/7, and it will just, it will see anybody that tries to come near the building. So it will actually scan the entire close we live in, literally, if anybody comes or goes. I have sat there before and I've pulled up in the car and just watched the camera, because it's literally watching everybody in the close what they're doing, which is quite funny. But it is really, really important that you investigate the legal system, talk to your local police department, to determine if you can get a restraining order against the person who abused you. They might be able to give you other suggestions that can keep you safe. They might be able to send somebody out to your apartment or your house to go through the safety options and to provide you with some safety equipment. They may be able to assign you to a local domestic abuse charity so you can get support. So there are many, many organisations and charities that you really only get to access if you go through the police department. And it was something that I didn't really know existed. And the amount of support and help I got through them was fantastic. But I didn't know that existed until it all really kind of went pear-shaped. So it really is important that you put yourself first. And when you're in an abusive relationship, it's really normal to feel overwhelmed and frightened and helpless and trapped. Okay? Safety planning can give you that level of confidence that you have some control over your situation, in that you can grab your bag and run at any point. And you need to take your time and really think about what you can do to stay safe now and in the future. Because if you are, or if one of your loved ones are a victim of domestic abuse, contact your local domestic abuse support service. They have trained advocates. They have access to so many resources that we have no idea about, and the support is so much better than it used to be. 15 years ago, the support was non-existent. Now they're falling over themselves to help you. And it's so important that you put yourself and your children first, because the thing that drove me to finally leave, I was done, was when I was assaulted in front of my son. And I said, I am never having my son growing up thinking that it's okay to treat a woman like this. And that was my final moment. That was my moment when that was, when the light switch went off. That was it. Had that not happened, then who knows how long the relationship would have carried on for. I don't know. Because I didn't have the strength to leave. And it was only that gave me the strength. And you will have your moment when it's right for you. But in the meantime, maybe make some plans. Just have some backup there. Just, make a note, if needs be, keep a notebook in your drawer at work where you keep your evidence, where you keep your log of what's happened and when and who, what, keep your photos and store them at work on your computer. Email them to yourself at work and then delete the outgoing email on your email box so that it's not traceable if somebody decides to snoop. But whatever you do decide to do, stay safe.